Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today I'm talking my top 5 recommended Space Wolf reads. The very best adventures to fill your heart with the Sons of Russ. Now I'll throw out a general spoiler warning to begin, as no, we're not going to be diving in depth here, but we are going to be summarising the stories and talking about a few events that may happen therein, so just keep that in mind. I was planning to talk some Bjorn the Fell-Handed today, but I decided to save that as a little Christmas treat for myself, so we'll talk him closer to then. However, anyway, with that said, let's just jump straight into today. A quick honourable mention for some titles many probably expect to see here, and ones that are definitely worth checking out if you're a Wolves fan. First honourable mention goes to the heresy novel Prospero Burns. If you're looking to learn more of the Space Wolf Legion of old, this should be your go-to read. It deals with the Space Wolf Legion in the build-up to the assault on Prospero, and it just brings you into the Legion, giving you a greater understanding of their ways and culture. Second honourable mention goes to the Dawn of Fire novel The Wolf Time. This one, in a similar vein to Prospero Burns with the Heresy, is pretty much required reading for the Space Wolves in the current timeline, showing how the chapter dealt with the return of Guilliman and the introduction of the Primaris, the conflict that Grimnar was faced with in being solely responsible for Russ's legacy. But okay, that's it for the honourable mentions. Now on to my personal top 5 recommended Space Wolf reads. And obviously this is just my own personal opinion. I haven't read every single novel under the sun, so I can only go by the ones I have read. You're free to agree or disagree as always. Drop your own favourite reads in the comments below. Now, these are in no particular order, just simply 5 of my favourites. And beginning with number 1, we have The Emperor's Gift. Well, it makes sense to get this one out of the way first, as I raved about it again only just yesterday. This book is primarily a Grey Knight focused story, following the Grey Knight known as Hyperion, and it's fantastic for that in its own right. It follows the events of the Grey Knight's introduction to the First War of Armageddon, namely their banishment of Angron, and the months of shame conflict that came after. And so, with it being Grimnar who called the Grey Knights to Armageddon, the Wolves are obviously heavily involved in this story. Quite simply, the Space Wolves steal the show here. They are portrayed at their absolute captivating best. Unbelievably deadly and vicious, yet also full of the expected humour and character. You get to see a younger Logan Grimnar, who maybe isn't quite the wise old wolf you expect. However, you see him in his absolute prime, as a warrior beyond compare, who can just demolish anyone who stands against him. There is also the most legendary entrance of Bjorn the Fell-Handed in existence. Something we've spoken about before on the channel and undoubtedly will again. Something that just gives me goosebumps every single time. I honestly just reread that section this morning, and yep, I can confirm goosebumps. Just as awesome as ever. You even get to see a Fenrisian Inquisitor, so what's not to love? Trust me, The Emperor's Gift is a stellar read, and if you're not a fan of the Space Wolves before it, you will be after. Moving on, next we have Leman Russ, the Great Wolf. Now this is Leman Russ's Primarch series novel, and largely covers the Dueling campaign, where the infamous duel, or more accurately fight, against his brother Lion L. Johnson takes place. Any story where you get Primarchs fighting a campaign together is most likely going to be a good one. However, what's particularly great about this is that the Primarchs aren't just relegated to a moment or two as they so often are. Leman Russ and Lion L. Johnson feel like integral characters. They are the two key characters to this story, which they absolutely should be, and so we get to see the real turn of events from both sides' point of view. How and why such tension between the brothers existed, and how it was all inevitably leading to that fight. The brilliance of this one though is that it shows a glimpse of Russ in the aftermath of the heresy as well, dealing with his grief and even a farewell from his father. It's an absolutely quintessential Leman Russ read, and a great one for Dark Angel fans too. Moving on, my third most recommended Space Wolf read, Battle of the Fang. This one shows how Magnus's invasion of Fenris actually went down. Set barely a few centuries after the heresy, you get to see a time in the lore very rarely seen, especially for the Space Wolves. And so you're for the most part following Space Wolves you've never seen or heard of before. You get to see how the feud between the Wolves of Fenris and the Thousand Sons continues on. How Magnus managed to lure the Space Wolves away from Fenris to even be able to assault the Fang. The rip-roaring fight for time as the few Space Wolves remaining hold out against desperate odds. You get to see Magnus walking the very home of his brother Russ, and the legendary Bjorn the Fell-Handed being woken to go face to face against the Primarch. Bjorn the Fell-Handed against Magnus the Red. Do I really need to say anything more? For all the action of this one, there's still plenty of time for insight into the chapter, learning and understanding on how the Wolves have moved on from the time of the heresy and how they are adapting to their future. It feels like the Wolves at a bit of a crossroads here, in this defining moment of their past and shaping for their future. Next up, number 4. Quite possibly my very favourite Heresy series read, and one that is just simply close to my heart, Wolfsbane. Where do I begin with this? This is the story of Leman Russ feeling the desire to fulfill his role as executioner, feeling the responsibility to his father, and the need to face his first ever brother, Horus Lupercal. Here you will see the Emperor introducing Horus to Russ, Sanguinius's arrival to Terra, the relationship between Russ and Malcador the Sigillite, with one of the best scenes of the two ever, and of course Russ and Horus meeting one last time. There's even a young Belisarius Cawl making an appearance in the side story. It's just a fantastic read, and I will say the audiobook here takes it to another level. The legendary Jonathan Keeble absolutely nails Russ in this one, really just packing it full of emotion. I cannot accurately describe the goosebumps and chills I got the first time I read this, or well, listened to it. Horus facing Russ. It felt like undiscovered territory, heading into the unknown. And the whole Space Wolf Legion's suicidal assault on the vengeful spirit is just beyond epic. The entire story an emotional rollercoaster, really showing you a depth to Leman Russ you've never seen before. I still listen to scenes of this one or read them on a regular basis because it's just that good. If you want to understand the real Leman Russ, the man, the brother, you need to read this. And finally, my final top 5 recommended one, Ashes of Prospero. Now this isn't anywhere near as emotional or heavy, if you will, compared to the others here. But what it is, or at least what it feels like to me, is a simply good fun Space Wolf adventure. Now I did feel like this got semi-retconned a bit by the release of the Wolf Time, but I think it still leads into it okay, so you could read that novel before this. And really, Ashes of Prospero works very well as a standalone adventure read anyway. Here you get to see briefly how the Primaris are settling into the Space Wolf chapter, how they continue their search for any signs of their returned Primarch, the Space Wolves still very much reeling from the returned Guilliman. However, the story mainly focuses on the Stormcaller, gathering together a motley band of adventurers and heading off on a quest to the infamous Prospero. He even brings along the legendary Bjorn the Fell-Handed to boot. At the end of the day, the Space Wolves are all about adventure. And no, this one might not be goosebump raising like some of the others, but what it is a simple fun adventure. Something in a universe filled with grand epic campaigns is actually a nice change of pace, and one that fits the Wolves to a T. But okay, that's it for my top 5 Space Wolf recommended reads. Once again, we have The Emperor's Gift, Leman Russ the Great Wolf, The Battle of the Fang, Wolfsbane, and Ashes of Prospero. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. What other Space Wolf stories do you love that I may not have mentioned here? And what is your particular favourite Space Wolf read? Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? With that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.